Ballerinas, welcome back to Reformation Rambles, a series where I tell you all about the history of the European Reformation. Today we're going to talk about a key figure. Without him, the Reformation would not have taken place when and how it did. Born in Hartenfels Castle in Torgau in 1463 to Ernest, Elector of Saxony, and his wife Elizabeth, who was the daughter of the Duke of Bavaria, let's talk about Fredrick the Wise, or Fredrick of Saxony. Part 1. Humanist Scholar. Fredrick became Elector of Saxony 1 year after the Leipzig division of Saxony. Basically, it was split in half into two kingdoms. He came to power in 1486. He'd be Pope Leo X's preferred candidate, the Holy Roman Emperor. But Fredrick didn't really want it. Leo even tried to butter him up by awarding him the Golden Rose of Virtue in 1518. This is an award that the Pope sends once a year to an individual they deem to be incredibly virtuous. 16th century, it'd usually go to someone they wanted something from. As Elector of Saxony, Fredrick could work closely with whoever the Holy Roman Emperor would end up being. So even if he didn't want the role, he still cared about who had it. He pushed political reform with the previous Holy Roman Emperor, Maximilian I. He'd been made president of the Imperial Council in 1500s, acted as imperial vicar. Essentially, he acted as stand-in, like, king between Maximilian and the new Holy Roman Emperor. Being elected in that blank space, he had, like, the power as imperial vicar. So he knew the job, and he had a lot of sway. He just didn't want it. Actually, would end up securing Charles V's election as Holy Roman Emperor, but with a few points of his own. He'd negotiated an electoral agreement that would reduce Charles's overall power in the empire. He did convince the other electoral princes to vote for him, but if, and only if, he repaid a debt to Saxony from 1497. He agreed and Charles became Holy Roman Emperor. If you're interested in Charles and stuff he did, there's a video about that up there. Elector of Saxony, Fredrick, would avoid war, which was very rare for this period in history. In 1502 he founded Wittenberg University to compete with Leipzig University. That was like in the part of Saxony that wasn't his anymore, so I gotta compete with them somehow. He was a patron of humanism, humanist arts and ideas, and Catholic reform. He was particularly in support of the Augustinian observant movement. It was headed by someone quite local to him, Johannes von Staupitz. After his death, he would pass the movement on to another Augustinian by the name of Martin Luther. Let's talk about that. Part 2. Protective Reformer. Fredrick of Saxony is best remembered as the man who protected Martin Luther from the wrath of the Pope and the Catholic Church as a whole. If you don't know about that, I made a video about it last year. Go watch that after this. But like with all of history, it's really not that simple. Now, Fredrick was responsible for protecting Martin Luther from both the Holy Roman Emperor and the Pope. Not because he necessarily agreed with Martin Luther, but more likely because he believed that his subjects were entitled to a fair trial. Again, quite progressive for the 16th century. The Holy Roman Emperor before Maximilian I had guaranteed this as a legal right for Saxony's citizens, essentially. And because this was a relatively new legal right, Fredrick really fought for it for Martin Luther. This would result in Martin Luther being heard at the Diet of Worms in 1521, and after the Edict of Worms condemned him as a heretic, it was Fredrick who organised for him to be kidnapped and kept in Wartburg Castle where he'd be safe. And these two things were the difference between this and all previous attempts to reform the church. Without it, Protestantism wouldn't have been given a chance to spread, and it probably wouldn't have happened like this. The schism of the church would not have happened at this time in this way without these two events. This is the catalyst for the European Reformation, and I'm talking every European Reformation because this is the one that started it all, and that is mental. It fucks with my head. It's amazing and shocking and so wild that if this dude hadn't gone, hey no, you need to give him a proper trial, we wouldn't have Protestantism in the way we do now. Fredrick said in 1517, perhaps will show if I've been a good diviner. It did. Read that he used diplomatic stalling tactics to get his way without using warfare. I couldn't put it better. That's spot on. That's such a good explanation. Diplomatic stalling tactics. Like I said, Fredrick didn't support Luther's beliefs. He was a devout Catholic, literally till the end of his life. I think his infamous relic collection really shows that. So Fredrick's relics. In 1518, this collection consisted of 17,443 items. Included the thumb of St. Anne, fig from Moses' burning bush, from the Holy Manger, and milk from the Virgin Mary. Now, two things. One, relics like this existed all over Europe. Granted, this was one of the largest collections, but they existed everywhere. There are a lot of duplicates. There'd be like 5 of St. Anne's thumbs, for example. By reading, I have concluded that the majority of these are completely fake, as have a lot of historians. Second, these collections were a way to make a lot of money. People would pay to see and touch these relics, with the assumption it would reduce the time they'd spend suffering in purgatory. This was a practice that Martin Luther had slated in his 95 Theses that led to him having to be seen at the Diet of Worms at all. This was one of the things he was so opposed to, was the greed of people using the church for greed, essentially. With his big old collection, was making bank whilst protecting the guy who opposed the practice, and I think that shows that him protecting him was not a religious move. He was fine with this. He was making a lot of money off this. And he kept displaying these relics until like 1522. Even though he's keeping Luther safe in a castle through all this, it's mad. His ideas are being allowed to spread while he's profiting off the opposite. Fredrick barely spoke to Luther in person. Often he'd get his buddy Pfaffinder, and like, they were buddies, they like went on their holy pilgrimage to the Holy Land together when they were young. They were good pals, but he'd just get him to pass messages on to Luther. He only spoke to him like a couple of times in person. Now, it is hotly debated whether Fredrick became a Lutheran on his deathbed. He definitely leant more towards Protestant ideas later in his life. By the time he was dying, Saxony was seen as an evangelical area, not a specifically Catholic area, but also not Lutheran. The reason people think he converted is that he received Protestant communion on his deathbed, rather than like the Catholic last rites type thing. And with the added factor that he protected Luther, he allowed Protestant ideas to disseminate. I think people are bound to read into that, right? He protected the guy who spread these ideas, maybe he started to believe them. Makes a good story, but there's no clear point of conversion. There's no clear point where he specifically said he was a Lutheran. And this could have been a move to sort of unify the country a bit more, because obviously things are splintering between Catholic and Protestant things, and he's like, well, if I can take Protestant communion. I don't have much to back that up. After all my reading, that was how I felt about it. It may be that he did convert. I'm not saying he didn't. I just think it's unclear. We couldn't read his mind. We don't know what he believed when he was dying. Fredrick the Wise died unmarried in 1525 at Lochau and was buried in Schloss Heli. Oh, can you tell I failed fucking year 9 German? In Wittenberg. And he was succeeded by his brother Duke John the Steadfast, who was a Lutheran and made it the official religion of Saxony in 1527. And that's the story of Fredrick of Saxony. If you enjoyed it, I know it's a bit of a short one this week. I'm working on a mammoth video where I'm working on a video on someone that everyone ever has an opinion about, and it's taken me a long time to wade through it, so just a short one this week. So if you did enjoy this, please give me a cheeky like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments if I touched on anything you'd like to know more about. I find all of this so interesting, literally. If you don't want to put it in the comments, feel free to tweet at me, at bobbinsleak, and I'll see you guys next week.